Happy New Year, and welcome to the January 20th, 2021 edition of the National Urban League Jobs Network Digital Career Success Series. I'm your host, Kenneth L. Johnson, president of the Harlem, New York-based diversity recruitment firm East Coast Executives. I'm so excited to be back for another year of the DCSS with the National Urban League team of Wanda Jackson and Tristan. We have some amazing speakers lined up for the 2021 season, and one of them is here with us today for navigating the new normal. Let's welcome my friend, Tristan Layfield, to the program. Tristan, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, and thank you so much for having me.
Man, we're really excited to have you here today, man. I wanted to tell a big story about how I came across you, but this is truly a story of social media at work, man. I've been seeing you for a couple years out here pushing the Layfield resume brand, delivering some great programming, and I'm excited to have you here today.
Thank you so much. I appreciate all those kind words, man. It's been some work over the last 4 years.
Hey man, it's good work, right? This is the good work. It's a big day today in the country, but it's a big day here on the National Urban League DCSS 2021, man, kicking off with you and navigating the new normal. Introduce yourself to the audience, please, sir.
Yeah, absolutely. So if we can go to the next slide, Kristen, that'd be great. My name is Tristan Layfield. I'm the owner and head career coach at Layfield Resume Consulting. I've helped over 700 clients land the roles they've been seeking and brand the businesses that they've been building, right? And I do that through, document creation. So I work with people on their resumes, cover letters, LinkedIn, but I also do that through coaching. So we have a career coaching program here. I also do some executive coaching. I'm going to give you guys a little intro into some of my background. I've held some roles at some Fortune 500s, including IBM, Thermo Fisher Scientific, and you'll find some of my work in Black Enterprise, Business Insider, and on LinkedIn as a top voice. So it's a little bit about me.
Look,
now,
I think you're underselling yourself. But I'm going to let you keep going. Let's go.
Perfect. So let's talk about the things that you want to discuss today in this presentation, why you are here. And if we can go to the next slide, please. So there's really 3 topics that we're going to be discussing today. And the first one is going to be digital branding, right? We're going to talk a little bit about what digital branding is and sort of why that is necessary or important for you as a job seeker or just as a professional overall. The next topic that we're going to be talking about is virtual interviewing. So things have shifted and changed due to the pandemic, right? A lot of us are not going to in-person interviews. And so there are a few things that are the same about virtual interviews, and there are a few things that are different about virtual interviews. So we're going to get into those similarities and differences and talk a little bit about how you can be better prepared for those. Now, the next topic that we're going to discuss after that is salary negotiation, because we all want to be where the money resides, right? So we're going to talk a little bit about how we can get to where the money resides. So let's go ahead and dive into digital branding. So why is branding yourself online becoming increasingly important? All right, so right now we're in this situation where many of us are, in our houses due to the pandemic. We're not able to attend large networking events. It's really hard to really get our name out there. So digital branding is now sort of taking the place for many of us when it comes to that networking piece, right? This is how we start to put ourselves out into the job market and make ourselves known and make ourselves seen. But it's also the way that we begin to stand out. Right? We're in a very competitive job market right now. And so we need to build our own professional brand online to really start selling our skill sets and our expertise and to attract the employers that we want to work at. So let's move to the next slide and talk about this. So right now, if you want to have the most success in your job search, you need to think of yourself like a business, right? So instead of offering services or a product to a client, you're offering your expertise to hiring managers and headhunters or recruiters, right? So just like a company, much of your success hinges on building an effective image through creative marketing and frequent advertising of your services. So you really want to start building this brand so you can build exposure, which then fosters trust and then insinuates expertise, right? And those are the things that that recruiters or hiring managers are looking for in the candidates that they're seeking for these roles. So that's really why building that digital brand is so important for you in this moment. Now, there's multiple ways that you can build a digital brand, or a professional brand, as I like to call it. And we're going to move to the next slide and talk about a couple of the platforms that you can utilize. Now, the first one is Facebook. So Facebook is not necessarily the best place to hit on headhunters, recruiters, or hiring managers, but it's a great place to start building your digital brand with people that you currently know, right? With people from school, friends and family, people who work at some of these places that you might actually want to get into. And so it's really nice to start building the brand there, and also to start warming your connections with some of these people, because one of the biggest things when it comes to your job search, or one of the biggest things that should be in your job search strategy, is networking. Networking is a key essential when it comes to your overall job search strategy. And you want to start, close, right? Most people aren't comfortable with networking, especially right now in this digital space. So you want to start close with the people that you know. And Facebook is a great place to start doing some of that and start warming up those leads with people that you already have connections with. Now, the next platform.
They say that 75% of the people reported that they found their jobs through networking. So I think starting at the Facebook level probably is a great idea, because it really allows you to network strategically with people you're probably a little more familiar with.
Absolutely. It's sort of that practice stage before you start jumping out into, reaching into people's DMs that you don't even know. You can start with the people that you do know and really sort of get that sort of elevator pitch down. Make sure you're clear on exactly what you want to do, where you want to land, before you start asking for time from people that you don't even know. Right. And I love that statistic. 75% of candidates find their opportunities through networking. When we think about this, only about 20% of jobs are filled through online applications. Around 75 to 80% of the rest of them are filled through networking and referrals. So it's really, really essential that you get into that networking right away inside of your job search before you even really need a job, because we don't want that desperation to come out. People can smell that from a mile away and they feel like they're being used, right? So the next platform that I want to talk about here is Twitter. So Twitter is a great platform for people who have those fleeting thoughts, right? You're always thinking about, your industry. Maybe it's marketing, maybe it's career stuff, whatever the case may be. Twitter is a great place to get those thoughts right out your head and start building your brand there. It's a great place to also build threads, use hashtags so people can find you. And I've actually seen multiple people land roles through Twitter. Actually, my best friend landed her role with Target through a Twitter connection. So it's actually been very, very useful when you're sitting there and you're talking about some of the things that you're learning. Maybe you're talking about some trainings that you've been to. Maybe you notice some trends inside of your industry. You start talking about that. And we all have those very viral moments for all of our industries that happen on the internet. And Twitter is where most of those things happen. So if you're on that platform, you can really dive in and you can make yourself known fairly easily utilizing Twitter.
Someone shared with me a stat the other day saying that Twitter is the third most active job search portal. I think behind like Indeed and LinkedIn. It was Twitter. Amazing. I didn't know that, because so many people kind of dismiss Twitter as just a place where there's a lot of noise, but people are really actively finding opportunities there.
Yeah, and there is a lot of noise on Twitter, right? Let's just be real. In most of these social platforms, there's a lot of noise all over the place. It's about finding your community, finding the people that are interested in the same things you're interested in, that are in the same field that you're in, and interacting with them on a regular basis. A lot of our industries will have certain industry chats that take place on certain days and times with people on Twitter using the same hashtag, right? There's tons of different things. And I see people all the time posting about jobs, right? If you're trying to get, especially into the media, right? If you're trying to get into any news outlet, I see news outlets posting jobs all the time. And I'm talking about the actual reporters and journalists that are out there actually posting, hey, we're hiring for, someone to write on diversity and inclusion in the workplace for Slate or whoever the case may be. So I've seen that numerous times, and oftentimes I will see it on Twitter before I ever see it on any other platform. So that's a really great platform to dive into. Now, the next platform that we're going to talk a little bit about is Instagram, right? So most people think that Instagram's just about the pretty pictures. You go out there, you give us a nice selfie, you look good, give us the outfit of the day. But Instagram can actually be a great place to start building your brand. And when I'm talking about branding, that's actually the place that I got my biggest start in when I built my business, was actually Instagram, posting informational posts, right? Posting things and statistics, posting news that's going on inside of there. And you'll actually be surprised the amount of people that will engage with that. Now, over the time, Instagram has it's built a little bit of a more complicated algorithm, I would say, than it used to have. But you can still utilize hashtags to find job opportunities, to connect with people in this space. And once again, I've had actual clients who've reached out to people on Instagram and have landed roles through referrals because they reached out to those people on Instagram. So sometimes it's not just about posting all of your wins, all of your things. Sometimes it's also about the engagement that you're able to do with other people on the platform. That actually helps build your brand as well. And Instagram is all about that engagement, that commenting, right? People really love to have conversations in those comments. People love to slide in DMs on Instagram and ask you questions about the things that you're talking about. So this is a great place to sort of build your own thought leadership, if you will, on that platform. And you're able to also sort of flex a little bit of your creativity muscles on there. That's sort of what I like. It's a little different than some of the other platforms in that capacity, which I think is really nice for people who especially are in the creative fields, right? This is a great place. If you have things that you can put in a portfolio, Instagram's a great place to start highlighting some of that work.
I also think, like Instagram even, and all the social media feeds, but if you want to connect with others in the industry, in your industry of choice or your current industry, it's just a great place to kind of see what's trending in the industry, where the SMEs are, where the decision makers are, and what they're talking about, and then become part of that conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's also a really great place to sort of understand people at a little bit more authentic level, right? People aren't always on Instagram, though there are moments when people are on, but people have lives on Instagram. They're in their Instagram stories, right? You'll have people who are thought leaders in certain industries and they're posting about their dogs or what they're eating and, all these different, watching the game, whatever the case may be. And so it's an opportunity to get to learn about those people, which can help you down the line when you're trying to connect with them, right? You're finding those points of connection with these people, and Instagram's a great place to find that. So now we get to the big kahuna, the last of the four that I'm going to be talking about, and it is LinkedIn, right? So LinkedIn, everybody thinks of it as a professional Facebook. I think that is underselling the platform dramatically, right? So LinkedIn is a great place to really establish your own thought leadership, because this is the largest platform, or the largest professional social networking platform out there on the internet, right? So this is, if you get on here and you start interacting with people who are thought leaders, you can actually build a decent following on this platform. So I'm gonna take a little moment on LinkedIn here, because I think this is a great place for professionals to really dive in when it comes to brand building. Now, the first thing you need to focus on is building a robust profile. Right? What I mean by that is you want to have your profile pic. You want to have a header image. You want to make sure your headline is engaging. You have a good summary. So I'm going to talk about those four real quick. We talk about profile pictures. Most of us right now aren't trying to interact with a lot of people. We got COVID out here running rampant. We don't necessarily want to get sick. So what I tell people is, with your profile picture, you don't actually have to go to a professional photographer all the time for an Instagram profile picture. Most of our phones have a nice portrait mode on them, where we're able to take a portrait picture with a blurred background. So if you step outside, maybe in front of some buildings or in front of some trees, or if you're in the Midwest or the Northeast like me, maybe in front of some snowy covered things, right? You can take a portrait mode photo, have someone take a portrait mode photo of you from the shoulders up, right? And we want it to be something that's inviting. So try and smile. And those pictures actually work really well. And I find that what happens is you actually give a little bit of texture to the background, which helps your picture pop a little bit on the platform. right? Now, the next thing is your header image. So that's the image that's behind your profile picture. Most people don't know you can actually change that image, and you should change that image because it's one of the pictures that people see immediately when they come to your profile. They also see it in the My Network section when they're looking at people to potentially connect with, right? So you can build a header image on Canva. If you're good at Photoshop or any of those other things, you can build a header image that sort of helps brand you a little bit further. You can even take it a step further and even put your contact info, like your email in your banner, to make it easy for people who want to reach out to you and connect with you for potential opportunities, right? And then the next thing is your headline. So most people keep their headline as just sort of, whatever their role is at whatever company they're at, right? And while we want to know your role, we need to take that a step further. Your headline follows you across the platform when you're commenting, when you're messaging on the My Network section, right? So we want it to be enticing. And I actually use an acronym called READ because we want people to read your profile. And what that stands for is we want your role, we want your expertise, and we want your actionable difference. How do you make a difference, or what makes you different inside of the work that you do? If we can include those in our headline, we can actually, entice someone to click on our profile and sort of see more about us. And that's the entire point of LinkedIn, is to get people to your profile to really be intrigued about what you do. And then the next step is potentially asking for your resume, right?
Yeah.
You have something, kid?
I do. And listen, two great gems that you just left us with. I've never heard of anyone speaking about possibly having your contact info in the banner because it's a very nondescript way to get that information out there. But also, if you can go over that READ acronym for me again, I'd appreciate it.
Yes, yeah. So it stands for role. So we want people to know what your current role is, right? And then the next one is expertise, right? So what do people come to you for all the time? What are you known for inside of your work, right? That's your expertise. That's your area of expertise. Or if you're trying to transition, what do you want to be known for, right? And then the A and the D stand for actionable difference, right? How do you make a difference in the work that you do, or how are you different than everyone else who does the same work? And that's going to let people know why they should read more about you, why they should contact you, what potential return on investment they may get from you as a candidate, because they understand that actionable difference that you make inside of the organization.
Man, that's amazing. I like that. I like that a lot.
Thank you. Thank you. And then we get to the summary. And this is where I see people really, the profiles just crumble, right? Everybody hates talking about themselves. So we can actually go back to the previous slide here. But the summary is where people just crumble because our society has told us not to talk about ourselves, not to really brag about what we do, and I think that it's really important for us to introduce ourselves well on the platform. This is your introduction to anyone who comes to visit your page who doesn't know you. And the amount of people that will come to your page that don't know you is insane, even if you're not posting on LinkedIn, because when people Google your name, LinkedIn is always one of the first things that pop up. So, you on that date, somebody's Googling you, they're going to find your LinkedIn, right? That recruiter, they Googling, you're going to find your LinkedIn. So what I tell people is we really want to focus on a couple of things. We want to expand a little bit more on that actionable difference, but tell people about the story of how you got where you are. People want to connect with you, right? I think people focus so much on the fact that LinkedIn is a professional social networking site that they forget the social networking part, right? They focus so heavily on the professional part. So tell people a little bit about you, how you got to where you are so far, how you make that difference that you talked about in your headline. And then you want to wrap up with a call to action. So this is sort of marketing 101 for anyone who doesn't know marketing. You always want to have a call to action for the people that are reading whatever you're putting out there, right? And so that call to action could be, feel free to connect with me here or via email at whatever your email is, or please feel free to visit my portfolio at whatever the website is, right? But have a call to action for the people that are reading your summary so they know what to do next.
For people that are struggling with this, I think it goes back to one of your earlier slides. You have to view yourself as a business. You're a business of one. So if you're operating like a business, there should be a call to action, right? It's just like a business would have a commercial. This is part of your branding, part of your commercial.
Yep, absolutely. I tell everyone, when you're on the job search, you think of yourself like a product. You're selling your skills, you're selling your abilities, right? People want to know what they're getting. So your summary is a great place to sort of give them those highlights of you, right? What those features are that they're going to be getting, and then sort of call them to action. Just like when you watch those little infomercials, they got the call to action, 1-800 whatever, right? So you know exactly what steps to take if you are interested in moving forward. And that's really what we want to do. And it's also a way to sort of provide recruiters and hiring managers the easiest way to contact you. We don't ever want them to be looking for ways to reach out to you. We want to provide them with the avenues right there, right then, so they don't have to go searching. They don't have enough time for that. And so quick things, couple quick things you want to do on here too. There's a featured section. You can feature some of your work. You can link to websites. You can link to portfolios. You can link to actual LinkedIn posts or articles that you've written. Your experience section. What I tell people with your experience section is think of it as a snapshot of your experience, right? It's the appetizer. It whets the palate for whoever's reading this, but you don't want to give too much away. You want it to be enticing enough where someone wants to request your resume, and that's when they get the full course. Right? That's when they know all of the things you've been able to do. So you just give them that little bit of appetizer, 3 to 4 lines, because remember, people are engaging on this platform most often on their mobile phones. We want this to be digestible. And then we have skills and endorsements. Those are really important. You can have up to 50 skills on the profile, and it's important that you have those because those actually help you be found. And then recommendations, just like the product. People want to know about reviews. They want to know how things have turned out. And those recommendations, it's the proof that you are who you say you are and you provide what you say you provide. And then connections, you always want to try and be strategic with your connections list. I tell people, look at people who hold roles at companies you want to work for, hold the roles that you want to have that are 1 to 2 levels above where you want to go. And that's really important because then you're curating your timeline, which means you're more likely to engage. And engagement is the key on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is all about comments, and they're all about interaction, so the likes and the insightful and the love and whatever the case may be, and the resharing, and also about having your own post and content for you to make your own post is all around you. If you go to a training, you can come and share your top 3 takeaways, right? If you see something like we talked about those viral moments in your industry, you can start talking about those and post on LinkedIn. Maybe you had an interaction with somebody at work that you learned from or that rubbed you the wrong way. Those are great things, learning experiences that you're able to bring onto the platform to start building your own thought leadership around this.
You know, if you can you touch base on this? You know, I still hear people say that they're kind of hesitant to add a photo to their LinkedIn profile. So I want you to touch base on that, and also the weight in the algorithm of the heading, of the headline statement. Does that actually weigh a little heavier in the actual LinkedIn algorithm?
Yeah. So as far as the picture, you have to have a picture. If people do not see a picture on your profile, they just assume that it's a fake, that you don't use it, that you're not a real person. I know oftentimes people will be hesitant to put a profile picture up because they are Black or they're a person of color and they don't want to be discriminated against. What I tell people all the time is your content on these platforms is a great way for you to also weed out companies, because companies are weeding out candidates, but your platforms are a way for you to weed out companies. If a company doesn't want to look at your profile because you are a Black person, odds are that's a company you do not want to work for, my friend. So I would not shy away from putting a picture out there due to discrimination. I actually think that's a great thing. If they're going to be discriminatory, now you know that's not a company you want to be at, and that's really important. I think we overlook the fact that we have many ways to weed out those companies just as much as they have to weed us out. Right. And I think that's one of those things. Now, as far as the algorithm, the header weighing in on the algorithm. So honestly, if I'm being quite honest with you, I don't fully know the answer to this in full transparency. I have heard a few things about that. It is something that is search optimized on the platform that can help you be found. So, having certain keywords inside of there can definitely be beneficial. But I think my acronym is the thing that really will help you get those keywords in there, right? That expertise, that actionable difference. If you're doing an actual difference, you're starting with an action word and you're telling me some of those key things that you're hitting on, right? If you're driving sales through, innovative business development and blah, 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 you're hitting on some of those key words immediately inside of there. But I don't fully know how much it weighs inside of that algorithm, if I'm being transparent.
Got it.
Perfect. So real quick, I just want to touch on a couple of things that are that other ways you can build your brand. And so we're going to get on out of here after this. So let's move to the next slide. Two ways. So we can go ahead and click through both of these. The first one is online portfolio. So if you work in certain areas, an online portfolio is very important, right? So if you do, let's say you want to go into user experience and user design, right? With that, or user interface, user design, whatever the case may be, with that, your portfolio is actually much more important than your resume in most cases. So you want to have an online portfolio of the work that you've been doing. And that is a great way to sort of showcase some of the things that you've worked on and some of your skills and abilities. The next thing there that you could do is a personal website. For some of us, we may not have necessarily a full online portfolio because, we're not doing something that's very visual, but you can build a personal website that sort of mirrors your resume, but gives a little bit more insight. You can go a little bit more detailed on the projects that you've been involved with, companies that you've been affiliated with, clients that you've worked with, things like that, that can really help build the case for you as a potential employee. And I think those are really, really great platforms that you have control over. You control how they look, you control how people interact with them. You're able to put keywords in there to be search engine optimized, so you're able to be found, right? And I think those are really great ways. And then you can take those and you can actually link to them in your LinkedIn profile in the featured section. So all of these things can play on top of each other. Don't think that you have to have one brand on each area. You have a brand across all of these platforms and they play off of each other and they interlock in some way, shape, or form.
Man, this information is so amazing. And I'm looking in the chat and I see people are connecting. I see Steven and Colin. They're in there connecting and giving their LinkedIn URLs. And this is what it's all about, right? How can you connect and connect with the mindset of adding value as well, right? Like that plays into the networking, the piece you spoke about earlier, network with intention.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. And let's go to the next slide. So we're going to switch topics here a little bit. We're going to move over to virtual interviewing, right? How does that differ than regular interviewing and how can you be prepared? So let's go to the first slide, the next slide here. And we're going to talk a little bit about things that are the same. So the first thing is research, right? So research the company. We want to know their mission, their values, initiatives they're working on. Maybe they're acquiring a new company. There's tons of different things you want to know about that company just to understand a little bit more about what's going on, how you play into those missions, values, and initiatives. And it helps you sort of craft your narrative when you're working on your answers for your interview. The other thing you want to research on is the person you're interviewing with as well. The next thing is build a story bank of answers. So this is how I say you build a story bank of answers. Go through the job description line by line. Stop at the end of each line and ask yourself, what experience do I have with this? Right? And then you say, okay, I have X, Y, and Z experience. Now you want to start asking yourself, okay, what was the situation there? What was the task that I had? What action did I take? And what result did that provide? Right? And so that way you sort of understand fully the entire process that you went through. And now that's an answer for some of those behavioral interview questions that you're able to use inside of your interview. And that's really what this next point is. If we go to the next point, it's STAR or PARK. That's what I just told you about, STAR. This is a way to answer interview questions: situation, task, action, result, right? You want to tell them what situation you were in, what task you had at hand, what action you took, and what result you had. Another method for that is called PARK, right? Which is problem, action, result, and knowledge. So essentially it's the same thing. What problem did you have? What action did you take? What results did you get? And what lessons did you learn from that? And that's really key there. People want to know if you've learned a lesson from the things that you've had going on previously. So these are things that are very similar inside of there. And then the last thing here that's very similar inside of these interviews is preparing questions for the interviewer. I cannot tell you how many times people have fumbled in an interview not asking any thoughtful questions around the experience that they may have, right? So you want to ask them about things with the culture. You want to ask them about things about success, right? What does success look like for someone in the first 90 days in this role, right? Ask them about their experiences inside of the company. All of these things are really important. They show that you're thoughtful. They show that you're engaging. You can also utilize a lot of that research that you did on the company, and you can put them inside of your questions and ask a little bit more about that, right? So these are the things that I think generally stay the same about the interview process. But there are many things that are different when it comes to virtual interviewing. And now, you got something, Ken?
Man, I love that PARC acronym. I wasn't familiar with that at all, but I think the knowledge piece at the end is the thing that's really driving me in this piece. What did you learn through the experience, right? And how does that relate back to how you'll handle a future situation, which is what the company's trying to assess, right? Past performance is the best indicator of future performance. And if you're sharing knowledge that you've gained through an experience, and you with a clear understanding of how you can either change and or follow through the same way, that's valuable currency in an interview setting.
Absolutely. And I tell people when they use the STAR method, I'll say add an L on the end of that. Lessons learned, right? So it's the same thing as the PARC. We just want to make sure that they understand that you don't just go through situations, you learn from them. And that's really what every organization wants. They want to know that you have learned from your experience and how you can utilize that information later. Now, let's get a little bit into the things that are different about a virtual interview. So the first thing here is that you have to set the mood, right? What I mean by that is you have to find a quiet place to be, right? With minimal distractions. And when I say minimal distractions, I mean from people, from pets, and also your background, right? You don't want a busy background. You don't want things that may be off-putting for a recruiter or hiring manager in the background. So you want to make sure you find a good place to really take this video call from. The other thing with setting the mood is that you have to test your equipment prior to the virtual interview, right? You got to make sure that you're able to get into the system, that your video camera's working, that your audio's on, right? That you know what you're doing here, that nothing's going to sort of fail during the interview. I also suggest you wear headphones, right? It makes it easier for you to hear what they're asking, but it also makes it easier for the person to hear your responses. And then the last part of that is you need to play the part. And what I mean by that is get dressed, and not just from the waist up. Please do not make that mistake. I mean your entire body, get dressed for two reasons. Number one, it puts you in the right mindset. And number two, there's nothing worse than shuffling around or standing up in the middle of an interview and you sitting there in your undies. It's just not going to bode well for you in an interview, right? And I've seen it happen too many times. We saw it on the news during all this virtual working. People literally getting dressed from the waist up. So we don't want to make that mistake, right?
I think mindset is extremely important. And even to some of the other things that you spoke about, I've seen people in virtual interview settings, and they came on without kind of checking through their technology. And that moment of them trying to get that right threw them off for the entire interview. They just never recovered from that because they were rattled, because they felt like they already had botched their chance. So I think that's really important. Like it's a run through. It's almost like if you would have came to an interview late, you already know you set yourself behind the 8 ball. So this way, if you're checking through some of the technology, like you said, if you're setting the mood, if you're prepared, then that just gives you the best chance to be successful in that setting.
Absolutely. 100%. I couldn't agree more, right? There is nothing worse than everything failing the moment you're trying to log on and you're like, oh my gosh, you can't get your mindset right then. And the other things, like for me, I actually bought a separate webcam. So I use a 4K, webcam. So I'm clear every time I'm doing any type of interview. I also have a ring light. That's why, you see this nice little glow, right? That's because I have a ring light. We always want to make sure we have good lighting too. We don't want to be in a dark setting where people can't see you, right? So all those things are really important as we increasingly move to a digital space. And that's also going to help you as you build your brand too, buying some of those things, because you're going to probably want to make video videos and things of that sort on these platforms. And these things can be very useful. Now, the next thing, and we can go to the next point, is you have to watch your body language even more than you do inside of a in-person interview, because it's really easy to come off as robotic and stiff on a camera. So we need to watch our body language. How are we showing up? Are we looking into the camera? Because that's something that I suggest when you're doing an interview, looking as close to the camera as you possibly can to feel like you're making eye contact. I also say, if you're a talker, if you're like me and you talk with your hands, you guys have seen my hands this whole presentation, that makes it seem a little bit more personable, things like that, right? But you also don't want to be slouching, you don't want to be back, you want to make sure that you're watching how you're presenting yourself on camera. And the best way to do that is to practice beforehand. Get on Zoom and record yourself. Have a friend come on and ask you some practice questions so you can see how you're answering them. And are you fidgeting during those, right? What's going on in this video frame that you can correct before you get in front of a hiring manager or recruiter? Then the next thing that we want to make sure that we're doing is make a connection. Yes, we want to do this inside of an in-person interview, but sometimes that happens a lot more naturally in person than it does on video. So we want to find a way to make a connection with a person. Don't be creepy. Don't do too much like, hey, I see there's something in the background that I really like there, right? Like, you don't want to be too creepy and creeping all around in their space, but that's where that research beforehand comes in handy, right? Looking at those Instagram stories, seeing some of the things that they were doing. Oh, you were watching the football game. Did you watch the Lions game? I'm a Detroiter. So if you watch the Lions game, blah, 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 right? You can connect with somebody on a different level if you do that research on that person before you have that interview. And then the last thing here is follow up with a thank you email. And everybody says you should follow up with interviews with some type of contact too. I immediately say with a virtual interview, immediately follow up with a thank you email. Usually what I like to do, this is sort of my tactic, I usually will follow up the next morning. Like literally, Gmail has a nice little scheduler feature. So I'll write the email, I'll have it scheduled for 8 a.m. the next morning, because what that does is now that puts me on your brain the next day before you even start with the rest of the candidates, right? You're thinking about me in the conversation that we've had. So you want to make sure you do that because it keeps you top of mind. And it also just tells them thank you for their time and the time that they spent with you. Perfect. So we're about to get to the thing that I think most people are about here, and it's where the money reside. Where the money reside. Where the money reside. Yes, right. So how do we get where this money resides? And I think most people are not confident in this area. And it's because they're not setting themselves up in the right way to be able to even ask for more money, right? And so here, what we want to do, let's move to this next slide really quick. You're going to see a graphic on this slide that is... Oh, actually, no, let's jump into the statistics, actually. This is really, and that's all. Mary had a little lamb boogie. I love that. So the numbers here, 64% of candidates do not negotiate their salary. That means the majority of us on this call are not negotiating our salary, and that costs us $750,000 over the course of a career. You're losing out on almost $1 million by not negotiating. You always want to negotiate. I've talked to recruiters across industries, and literally, I would say 97% of them that I've talked to have said that they expect a candidate to come back and negotiate. Right? At the end of the day, if you're the candidate they want, they're going to try and figure out what wiggle room they have, right? So you really want to make sure that you take the time to negotiate the money that you are deserved, right? And so how do we really do this, right? That's really what I think most people struggle with. So let's move to this next slide where I think now we're going to get to that graphic I was mentioning. This is a graphic that shows on the left what the company needs, on the right, what you provide. In the intersection of this Venn diagram is what you can do for the company, right? We want to identify the intersections of what the company wants and what you provide, which is what you can do for the company. And that's going to sell you to that company. That's going to sell your skills, your expertise to that company and let them know how you're going to provide them a return on investment in you as a candidate. And that's really what negotiating is about. It's about really selling that potential return on investment to the employer.
You know, I was looking here in the Q&A, and Amber wanted to know how you negotiate for government jobs. And I think it kind of follows the same principles. I understand that they may be a little more structured in the salary, but I do believe if you've done your research and you have a good idea of kind of where you can go on the particular grade, you can still negotiate. And sometimes you can negotiate things other than salary, correct?
Yes, absolutely. I love that you brought that up because that's where I was going next. So some people will negotiate vacation days. Some people will negotiate a professional development stipend, right? So they're able to go to conferences or able to take courses. Some people will negotiate tuition reimbursement type of things. Some people will, there's tons of different things that people negotiate. Sometimes if you're going into a company, sometimes it could be, an investment into the company that you're investing, that you're negotiating. Whatever it is, there's tons of different things that you can negotiate from your employer. If you have a large commute to this employer, maybe you're negotiating some of your reimbursement for that commute, right? And the wear and tear on your car, that 56 cents per mile that they'll give back that is able to be written off by them, right? There's tons of different things that you can negotiate to make your situation a little bit easier for them. Now, I see that Boogie also asked inside of the chat, who should give the number first? Right. And that's a really, really great question. I think, and this is just me, I've been lobbying about this for years. I think that companies and organizations should always provide a salary range for every job that they post. Personally, I just think that is something that should be there. I think companies should be very open and transparent about that. And so keeping in that same vein, I try to make sure that I understand the range that they have first before I actually give a number inside of here. So most of the time they'll ask you, well, what is your preferred salary for this role? Or what range are you looking for? And I'm like, I'm rather negotiable. I really like to know what the current range is for people who hold this position, or what you guys are currently trying to pay the person who is incoming. Do you guys have a range that you're looking at? All right. And I sort of flip that question back on them. Personally, if you look at most negotiation books, most of them will tell you the person to give the number first is the loser. That's typically what most negotiation books will tell you. What are your thoughts on that, Ken?
Yeah, I think there's so many resources out there, and I was going to ask if you have any that are specific to kind of what you suggest, but there seems to be quite a few resources out here where you can gather some really valuable information about salaries at organizations and kind of the range. And I think if you just come in prepared, it just allows you to be a little more concise and precise in your ability to negotiate salary, should I say.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's different things. So Glassdoor is a website that works well. PayScale is a website. LinkedIn has now started to provide salary ranges, and estimates on different types of jobs. So there's tons of different things. You could literally go and Google estimate salary, or, whatever the case may be. And most of these places allow you to put in the job title. They allow you to put in your location, because just because you're getting paid, $100,000 to do this job in Michigan does not mean you're going to get paid $100,000 to do that job in New York City, right? Those are two different things. They have two different market values depending on what's going on in that market. So it's important for you to take into account sort of, number one, the type of position, the type of work you're going to be doing. Number two, the location that you're going to be doing it in. And number three, the credentials and the experience and expertise that you're going to be bringing. Just because those websites give you a salary range does not mean that you can't fall outside of those ranges depending on the expertise that you're bringing with you to that role.
It's interesting. Like you had mentioned, the money brought the questions out, right? So
right?
Stacey would like to know, how do you answer the question? So what are you looking for?
Yeah, and that goes back to what I said earlier, right? I would let them know that I'm fairly negotiable on the salary. I'd really like to know what range you all are trying to pay the candidate who actually takes this role. Do you guys currently have a range in mind, right? And I'd ask them for that range. Most companies are going to try to avert the question, but what you've done is you've averted the question. You put it back on them, and now it gives them an opportunity they may avert. What I find is the majority of companies will just sort of of give you what the estimated range is, or they'll say, I have to check with so-and-so and I'll get back to you on that information. That's typically what they'll do. And they'll try to sidestep, which then allows you to sort of see what they come back to you with, right? But I personally do not like to immediately give the number, because many companies and organizations, if that number is way lower than the range that they were planning on giving you, they're going to take it. They're going to jump at it immediately. And now you've talked yourself out of $15,000, $20,000, $30,000 because you didn't even know the range that they were looking at inside of their budget.
Wow, we got a couple more questions. I'm going to jump on this. Actually, Linda, yes, this recording will be available, but you can always check the Urban League Jobs Network Digital Career Success Series YouTube channel for past episodes as well. We got Stacy again, who would like to know, does years of experience play a part in your salary negotiation?
Absolutely. I think years of experience is the thing that helps build those skill sets and builds the expertise, right? Do I think it's the biggest weight factor? No, but I think it is something that should be factored in to what's going on, because oftentimes, especially right now, right, we had companies and organizations that have laid off tons of people, or they furloughed tons of people because they, they were worried about where the economy was and what was going on with the pandemic. Well, now many of those companies are hiring and ramping back up, and they want people who are able to hit the ground running, which means that your years of experience is valuable in this very moment, right? That's actually a selling point for you. So I think it is something that factors in to the salary negotiation there.
Yeah, I think what you mentioned is really important. Years of experience are extremely important, but also as important as your ability to explain how you can add immediate value when you come in the door. So if you have a 30-day plan, a 60-day plan coming in that you've shared during your interview, that can often lead people to view you as the ideal candidate because you've already worked on how you can add value coming in the door.
Yep, absolutely. I love it. I love it. So let's talk a little bit. I'm also going to look at the salary negotiation from the flip side, because we're also looking for raises and to negotiate our salary once we're inside of jobs as well. So let's move to this next slide. And I want to talk a little bit about the things you need to focus on. So the first thing is focus on what is called RIM. And what RIM stands for is relevant, impactful, and measurable work. Right? So we want to focus on things that are relevant to your personal and professional goals, impactful to the company, and it can be measurable or quantified. Right? These are the things that are going to help you make the case. And actually, you can utilize that same acronym whether you're in the company or outside of the company trying to be a new candidate for that company, whatever the case may be. But you really want to focus on relevant, impactful, and measurable work, because that's going to help you make the case for any negotiation or any raise that you're trying to get inside of a company. The other thing that I think people don't focus on when they're inside of a company is having conversations on this year round. Right? We focus strictly on the performance management part at the end, and we'll say, okay, I should be getting my raise now, right? And we're not having these conversations often. So we should be having one-on-ones with our supervisor or our boss on a regular basis. I prefer, every other week or bi-monthly, whatever the case may be. And usually during those conversations, I will literally straight up ask them, like, am I on track to receive a raise? And if not, what do I need to change in order to be able to do that? Right? It's having those conversations up front, make sure that they understand where your mindset is, number one. And number two, you get the necessary feedback to change anything that you're doing to be able to then negotiate, well, not necessarily negotiate, but get that raise at the end of your performance management cycle, right? So I think it's really important, number one, that you, like I said, focus on those RIM areas. And number two, have those conversations year round. And then the last thing here, and anyone who knows me knows that I love to talk about having your receipts. I'm all about documentation, okay? We want to keep emails from internal and external stakeholders, right? And sort of utilize those. And that's when you're inside of a company already, right? Also inside of a company already, I used to solicit feedback from people inside of the company in multiple ways. Maybe it's via email. One time I created a survey survey for the people around me to measure me against promotion criteria or company goals and things of that sort. And I utilize that information and put it in front of my boss so they're able to see this stuff, right? They saw the emails, they saw the survey results, they saw the things that I was keeping, and we were able to utilize that to actually bump my salary quite a bit. And this also applies on the flip side. When you're a candidate, you want to have those receipts from people of why you are the best person and why you deserve the money that you have or that you're asking for, right? And those receipts actually can be embedded inside of that personal brand that you've been building, right? So let me tell you something. If I've been courted by many universities to come in, potentially be a director or the head of their career services center. But let me tell you something. I got the receipts. I got the LinkedIn top voice. I got the Black Enterprise articles, the Business Insider articles that are going to say, you need to pay me what I'm asking for. Right. And so it applies on both sides, that you have the receipts to back up that you have the expertise, that you provided the value, and that you are worth the money that you're actually asking for.
I love it, man. And now you have the Urban League Jobs Network Digital Career Success Series, right?
Look, and now we got, yes, let me tell you, y'all about to be right there on that beginning slide in that introduction. I'm telling you. Yeah, so you utilize all that information and then you're able to negotiate your salary based on that value that you bring. That's really it. When we think about negotiating salary, people will often say, well, I've been here, I came and I've done my job, I should be getting a raise. And let me tell you something, Tristan, the person, agrees with you, right? Tristan, the person that is a manager inside of a corporation, understands we pay people the salary that we pay them to come and do the job. We provide the raises for the people who go above and beyond and provide the receipts from that. That's just simply it. We live in a performance-based culture, and you need to show evidence of that performance to get the thing that you wanted. That's it. So that actually touched on all three of the topics. So that's all I have for you all today. You guys have been asking some really great questions, and I'd love to see if you all have any other questions about these three topics.
Man, listen, you said that's all you have. You gave us all you got, man. That was amazing. Some great information. I thought closing it out with the REM piece, relevant, impactful, measurable. That's really the key, right? How are you positioning yourself? You know, how are you having impact? And if you do indeed have relevant impact, are you able to measure it? And I think people struggle with finding ways to measure things that seem a little abstract to them. But if you sit down and really give it some thought, everything is measurable.
Everything is. Absolutely. Absolutely. And the thing about it is sometimes when we talk about results, we only think of numbers, but results can sometimes not be quantitative too. They can be qualitative results. You need to be able to convey those results though, right? In the things that you did and how they provided that value. So I completely agree. And unfortunately that, part of it is because companies and organizations aren't as transparent about the things that we do for them and how they impact the organization, which then puts the onus back on us to develop a system to be able to measure the things that we do. And that's why I talked about, maybe even creating your own survey and putting it out there to the people that you're working with, your internal and external customers, to gather that feedback and that data. So then you can utilize that inside of whatever you're trying to do. But it's important that we sort of act as our own biggest advocate inside of our careers and don't rely on the company or organization to provide us those things. It's in their best interest not to.
That piece about the survey, man, I think that's so important because really, that's kind of positioning people to basically take control, and sometimes even if taking control means that making a career change is necessary, at least you have those receipts and you have a survey. And if you created it in SurveyMonkey or whatever, but you have a survey with some information about how people felt about your performance. And that's job search gold, to be honest with you.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely, man.
Well, look, man, it's been a sincere pleasure having you with us today. I know this is your information here. Please, I'm telling you, you would be doing yourself a disservice if you did not lock in with Mr. Layfield. And you can find him in a couple different places here, is IG and Twitter. Of course, you can go to layfieldresume.com, and also our friend is LinkedIn. We love getting connections on LinkedIn. Tristan, man, I want to thank you so very much for coming out today and having an excellent conversation. I just see the Boogie put